in Egypt. The coloring of the phoenix, its miraculous birth, and its connection with fire are symbolic of the sun itself. These characteristics, however, lend themselves to a more exciting explanation, as we shall see. The inner sanctum of the Sun Temple at the city of Anu was the most sacred of all places. It was the home of the Sunstone, which the Egyptians called the Benben. Mounted on a truncated pyramid, the Benben was a square stone platform upon which was set a pyramid-shaped stone or pyramidion, giving the appearance of the stubby obelisk. It was on this stone that the phoenix or Bennu bird alighted. As far back as prehistoric times, the sunstone was revered as the dwelling of the sun god. The king buried inside the pyramid was believed to be under the direct protection of the god himself. This pyramidion, which was used as the capstone on obelisks and pyramids, became the most sacred fetish of the Egyptians. The strange feature of the phoenix legend is that it originated elsewhere and was assimilated into Egyptian sun worship by the priests of Anu at Heliopolis. The tales make it clear that the phoenix bird came from the direction of the east, some say Arabia, others Assyria, and that it flies to the sunstone in Egypt to repeat its flaming performance. Since the Egyptians were very parochial in their view of the world, the land of Arabia could very well be any place east of the Delta region. The Middle East home of the phoenix. In Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon, the sunstone was also revered as the dwelling of the sun god. It was not only pictured as a stubby obelisk, but quite often as an upright conical stone. At Byblos, the oldest of the Phoenician cities, which dates to at least 3500 BC, the Egyptian gods were worshipped side by side with those of the Canaanite pantheon. Some of these sanctuaries contained a sacred chapel. An example is shown on a coin from Byblos of the Roman Emperor Macronus, AD 217, which evidently represents a shrine many centuries old. It shows a sacred enclosure containing a conical-shaped dwelling of the sun god. The sunstone was called a Betil or Betil by the Semitic peoples, and its functions are like the pyramid-shaped stone found in Egypt. Betil is a Semitic version of the Hebrew term Bethel, meaning the dwelling or abode of God. In Palestine, the worship of the sunstone or Betil goes as far back as the 8th millennium BC. Digging in the ancient ruins of Jericho, archaeologists found at its lowest level, carbon dated to Neolithic times of about 7000 BC, a temple where at its center an oval stone stood upright on a stone pedestal. These Betil stones were found all over the lands of Palestine and Syria. At Beth Shean, an altar and Betil were found and dated to the mid-14th century BC. Most of these pagan shrines were destroyed by the Hebrews after the division of the Kingdom of Solomon. However, many still remain in more isolated areas, such as southeast Palestine near Arabia, in the land of the Nabateans. Found at high places, these altars appeared as stone blocks or stubby obelisks and were believed by the natives to be inhabited by their chief deity, Dushara. At Madaim Saleh, in northwest Arabia, the Nabateans left a necropolis of family tombs, many of whom have Betils or sacred stones. In fact, the black stone at Mecca, called the Kaaba, the most sacred of Islamic shrines, is believed to have fallen from the skies. It is also referred to as a Betil. The Heliopolis in Lebanon. Besides the one in Egypt, there is another famous Heliopolis nearby, called Baalbek. Since antiquity, it has been a city sacred to the sun god. The Old Testament calls it Beth Shemesh, or the abode of the sun god. Shemesh or Shamash being the Semitic name for the Sumerian sun god Utu. The land of Lebanon, known to the Sumerians as the Cedar Land, was under the aegis of the Mesopotamian sun god. At Baalbek, the Greeks erected a splendid temple to the sun god Apollo or Helios. It is also here that the Romans built a magnificent temple to their sun god Jupiter. This temple was the largest they ever erected, including Rome, indicating the importance they attached to this location. But what is remarkable about this temple is that it is built on a massive three-tier stone base that must have been here long before the Greeks and Romans. It is raised 30 feet above the ground and is paved with perfectly hewn and fitted stones ranging from 10 to 30 feet long and 6 to 9 feet wide. The base for this platform was constructed of cyclopean blocks of stone 32 feet long, 13 feet wide, and 12 feet thick. Each slab of stone is estimated to weigh 500 tons. A fourth stone lies in the quarry nearby, readily shaped and cut except for a portion of its base. It is 72 feet long, with a cross-section of 16 by 16 feet, estimated to weigh over 1,200 tons. The stone was apparently intended to extend the size of the platform, but the work was never completed. Such a massive stone platform was obviously designed to hold an immense weight, or for some operation that must have applied tremendous pressure on the ground. The Lebanese sun god Shamash, who made his home base at Baalbek, was in many ways similar to the Egyptian sun god. Like the Egyptian Ra, who appears with the sun disk over his head, Shamash is always shown with a sun disk containing a 4-pointed star and 4 radiating spokes. And just like Ra, he is often depicted with the head of an eagle. Some scenes also show him holding the symbols of immortality. When Utu or Shamash left Baalbek, one of his destinations was ostensibly the city of Anu in Egypt. His bright arrival and departure in flames became the core of the golden and red phoenix legend bird. For thousands of years throughout the Middle East, the Betil or sunstone became revered as the physical dwelling of the sun god. Its conical or pyramidion shape was their attempt to represent the dwelling of the sun god, that is, the command or personal capsule of the first stage of a composite rocket. In Egypt, the origin of the sunstone is partially remembered in the ancient hieroglyphic sign used to represent the city of Anu or Heliopolis. It is shown as a bolt aimed at the sky. The Greek omphalos as a Betil and geodetic marker. Even the Greeks, who came much later, adopted the conical-shaped stone as a sacred dwelling of their sun god Apollo. Called an omphalos, it was the holiest object at every oracular site. The sun god Apollo, who later became one of the most important gods of the Greek pantheon, originally came from Asia Minor, from Ionia. His cult first appeared on the island of Delos, from where it leapfrogged to Dodona on mainland Greece. In fact, the island of Delos was considered so sacred that it was inviolate in all the Greek wars. Even the Persians respected its sanctity and bypassed it. In his histories, Herodotus called Dodona the oldest of the Greek oracles, and archaeologists have traced it back to about 2000 BC. It was the first cult center to Apollo on the mainland. As Dodona declined in importance, Delphi replaced it as a cult center. Like Dodona, it also had a half-egg stone called an omphalos. Herodotus said that the omphalos here was wrapped with cord, with one end held by the Pythia or priestess as she queried the sun god in the stone. According to the Greek mythologist Robert Graves, the sacred stone at Delphi was also called Betilos by the Greeks. He refers to it as a cone-shaped pillar periodically anointed with oil and wrapped in raw wool on special occasions. It was the residence of a god and was said to have fallen from heaven. While the term omphalos means human navel in Greek, its use here seems to be that of the navel of the earth. Besides being the residence of the sun god, the omphalos was also a geodetic marker. It is interesting to note, and pertinent to this subject, that if a line is drawn through the oracular sites of Dodona, Delphi, and Delos and continued towards the mainland, it runs right through Jerusalem. Like the Greek sites, in ancient texts such as Jubilees 8 and Ezekiel, Jerusalem is often referred to as the navel of the earth. It seems that there was some sort of geodetic grid connecting sacred places in ancient times. Shamash was also known as the god of justice and measurements. He is shown in one instance with 2 gods overhead holding cords connected to an altar that bears his sacred symbol. Therefore, it seems that the term omphalos was applied to the conical stone for its geodetic meaning, that is, as the geodetic point of a master grid. On the other hand, the term Betylos was used to mean God's residence and referred to as an oracular device. In summary, the phoenix bird rising in flames became symbolic of the liftoff of the rocket craft. Initially shown in conical configuration, an imitation of the command capsule, it later became angular-shaped under the Egyptians, who used it as a capstone on pyramids and obelisks. Baalbek in Lebanon appears to be the original home of the phoenix bird, where a gigantic stone platform is all that remains of what was probably the main base for the chariots of the gods.
We transform it into sugar, fuel, plastic, and enough foodstuff to fill a supermarket.
It doesn't exist naturally. Corn is entirely a man-made phenomenon.
We grow it on the farm, in a lab, or even underground. On the cob, in a can, in a sack, or in a silo. It's a worldwide gold rush.
Ethanol is about ready to take over as the #1 user of corn in the United States.
Now, corn on Modern Marvels. Corn is the largest agricultural crop in the United States. Fields of corn cover more than 80 million acres of land. That's an area larger than the state of New Mexico. Pass that corn on the cob. It's the delicious treat we call sweet corn. Lakeside Foods in Wisconsin has been processing sweet corn for over 100 years. Here, corn is king. This is where corn comes to get canned. And to make sure your sweet corn stays sweet, it's an all-out war against the clock, starting with the instant it's harvested.
The critical time for processing is within 5 or 6 hours. We want to retain the sweetness of the corn. We don't want the sugars to turn to starch by being delayed in harvest. This is the first part of the process. As we've had the corn weighed, we're loading it on the dock. Now we're starting to push it into a conveyor, vibrating conveyor.
This vibrating conveyor system causes the cobs to continually rotate, so the weight of the cob doesn't damage the kernels resting on the belt. Once inside the processing plant, the sweet ears of corn journey into a carnival of precision automation.
As the corn comes into the corn room, we're going into the husker. The husker has 6 lanes. The lanes are separated by a series of neoprene and rubber rolls. What the rolls are doing in opposite directions are stripping the silk and the husk material off the ear of corn. Then it goes into a conveyor to further process. On average, in an hour, we're processing approximately 35 tons of corn out of the 4 huskers.
Surprisingly, almost all of the delicate corn kernels remain intact after this seemingly violent step. Next stop, the cutter. Ears must be positioned in the correct direction to meet the fast and furious